Sergio, it's a massive pleasure of having you here in person after, we had that amazing episode that I still, enjoy listening to every now and then. I think it's amazing having you.
It's a pleasure to be here, and let's go to round two.
Round two, yes, let's do it. I want to go straight into, how have you been recently? How's life been with you? And, you're in a good place, I believe. You seem in good spirits. But how's life been recently with you?
Yeah, always in good spirits. That's what you control is your behavior, your motivations, and but it's been a bit that hidden part that happened to the coaches and to the staff when they change clubs. As I told you, I'm now moving house, so finishing the rental. Ask for a few more weeks for the little one to finish his school. Sell cars, sell the bed, make pictures, terminate all the
A bit of
services.
everything.
So it's been quite boring, but always with a smile. Keep working out, stay connected to the world, to people, and
What
let's
workouts do
go.
you do? Because I'm always keen to find out about sports, like
So
workouts.
I'll give you this one. You can't miss it. Is Tabata. So you
Tabata,
search
yes.
on Spotify. You search for Tabata, and I always do at least four musics, and
Okay.
sometimes even get out to run. But when there's no time, and I've been doing indoors a lot, I get four songs, four Tabatas, and that's keeping me fit.
I've heard of it before, but what is it? Is it Portuguese or is it or just you don't
No,
know?
I don't have any idea, but it's
It
like some
works.
exercises. You work out for 20 seconds, you rest for 10. It has a music, so a nice song in
Rhythm.
behind,
I'll
and you
give it a
just
go.
work
I'll
out.
definitely give it a go.
Go for
I'm
it.
doing like a 1 month like preparation before I go on holiday, so I look good.
You're gonna need it for holidays. Get
So
your six
yeah,
pack going.
exactly. But no, honestly, it's once again great having you here. Uh, One story that stuck to me, and we were talking about this off air already, is when you mentioned your time in Africa. That to me, it's an amazing story that I think at the time I remember I mentioned on the live show that stories like that are often untold, are uncovered because we just maybe don't ask enough. Would you mind just touching on that again? Because and then maybe go a bit more into details because those are the stories that I think should be recorded.
Sure, I think it's big part of who I am as a person and the values I have and bring into football. That is taking care of the human also. So for me, football is a human activity, not only technical, tactical, but also human with values, with social. And I always took care in my time in Africa. I was 2 years technical director of Etoile Lusitana, an academy that transferred many players to Europe. One of them he scored the two goals that gave Inter Milan the youth league. They got the Champions League youth league. They won it with two goals of Ibrahim Mbaye. But it was more than just coaching. It was developing people as people. So some things that we used to do, for example, was getting breakfast before training. So nobody will do that in that reality. But we realized many players will start training at 8 a.m. They will leave their houses at 4 a.m. They will pick up three, four transports, and then they will arrive without any energy. So we start talking to people, and we found out many wouldn't even take breakfast, and we start giving that. The other thing was the preparation for tournaments. So, for example, many couldn't, for example, eat with fork and knife. So we'll have to prepare them in the center, show them how to do, and tell them, look, this is how people will do there. This is how they expect it to be done. So we'll almost teach them how to use the fork and the knife. Um, and so many other things like the travels in the airplanes. I think I told you this one, but we said to one player once, it's very hot in here. Go ask the hostess to open the window. And he went, so we all started laughing, of course. And there's a lot of these small things, but the thing I used to tell them a lot, and it's fantastic how they still almost all stay in touch with me, and I really appreciate that. But it is they always wanted to learn, and I used to tell them, even if football doesn't work, if you're gonna sell fruit in the market, for example, just be your best version. Give everything you got to help your families, to help yourself, to develop as an entrepreneur. And many of them went on to not playing professionally, but open their schools of football, their stores, their own businesses, and they always felt appreciative of the life lessons. And that's what sometimes I feel it sticks into the players, and that's what my mentor used to say. Football is a human activity, and if I would go now today maybe and ask all the players I've worked with, even now at Spurs recently, what did stayed with you from our interaction, it will be the human
The
side
human side of
that
it.
will come out as a first word.
That's amazing, and I think it connects with. I'm thinking about. Actually, we spoke about this too. Emiliano Marcondes. When I think his brand, Visionary Athletes, says more than an athlete, or something along those lines, and I think that resonates really well with what you just said, because you are more than an athlete. You are a human being first, and then you are an athlete. So yeah, that is, again, it's amazing. But do you also think, now that you mentioned this, I often see players, just to give you an example, for instance, there are, when you see under 17 World Cups, for example, you see outstanding players from Iran, from Uzbekistan, and countries that are a bit more separated culturally from a footballing perspective and a cultural perspective. When they do come to Europe, you see them struggling a little bit. And do you think that's maybe due to these cultural barriers that sometimes, are not looked after enough?
Definitely. First of all, a big hello to Marcondes, the machine. And yes, I think definitely that's why in Brazil also, where I was
In
in
Brazil too,
Senegal,
yeah.
always took care of explaining what's on the other side. And in Africa, we did something that I think it was very helpful. There was doing tournaments in Europe, so 3 4 times a year, which allowed them to get used to the cold. Many, for example, in tournaments, we went to the Milk Cup in Northern Ireland, and some of them they were wearing tongs and shorts and shirts, and they thought it's the weather. It's like in Senegal, in Dakar, which is warm the whole year. Minimum, it's maybe 16 degrees in
Definitely not
winter.
like Northern Ireland.
So yeah, they quickly found out it's not like that. But of course, we were prepared. We had clothes, but it shows that if you don't adapt, or if you don't prepare to go to a different way of living, of talking, of training, then you'll have. I think it's harder for you to make it. And some, I think they make it because they have a strong mentality, and some of them they needed that preparation to make it.
I mean, that's very well said. And I think, like you mentioned, sometimes it does happen as well with those countries that they have a cultural, like a rich cultural history, like Brazil, Argentina, and, same thing with like Colombia. Like, I speak to Colombian colleagues every day, and that's what they mentioned to me. Like, the cultural differences with Europe is massive, and the adaptation period is often overlooked. So that is definitely something, to consider there. Um, I wanted to ask you a question because I've been thinking about this to ask you. I think you give us like a very insightful response. What would you define as talent? Because I think often we see talent as technical abilities, or could perhaps be tactical abilities. Uh, what is talent for you?
Okay, so talent for me, first of all, it's not something you just got born with. For me, it's where you were raised, in which culture what did you had more contact with, how many hours you spent doing some things. But then also, talent is a whole. You have to see again, like you see the as I told you, it's human first. You have to see the player as a whole. the values, the mentality, the capacity to learn, and sometimes different people and different profiles arrive to the top. Some because they have the good technical ability, but then a very strong mentality. Some they are very strong physically, and that compensates for other things. So for me, it's not about talent itself. We speak about talent, putting everything on the person that is playing. For me, it's about who's watching and what do you need, because different clubs will have different approaches, different perspectives. Some club may say we look for speed, agility. Another one will say we look for good people, technical ability. Another will say we look for tactically very smart, adaptable players, physically very strong. So every club will have their own idea, and they will think that idea is the best. Maybe it's the best for them in that culture, in that scenario. But what I've seen is completely different profiles achieving it all worldwide. For example, in Brazil, I used to say this. My assistant coach, call it Felipe, is now a sporting director. He used to tell me, "Hey, Mister, if they tackle, they don't know how to play football. You have to defend, you have to anticipate, you win the ball, don't need to go down, then you control it." And for him it was all about controlling, passing, and having the ability to do it. For in Senegal it was about physicality. So they will train, and then they will go to the beach and train even more, because in their heads
It's all
it's
physical.
it's all physical, but it's also something they controlled, and they really put everything on it as an expectation to go to bigger things on the back of that. In Australia, for example, also very quick players and physically very strong, but very intelligent, tactically very aware. I used to speak to them like if you're speaking to your mates at university. You speak and they ask back, they want more, and they want information, so it was completely different. So in every place, what was regarded as a talent was different from others. So in Brazil, for example, there was a study a few years ago showing that 60% of the players that came to Europe, they went back to Brazil within 1 year. So that means that can mean several things. That can mean whoever is watching there, it's not watching the same way they are here. They weren't prepared to come to this reality, or so many things can be behind it. But that shows a lot that the talent, and a lot of players also, this is funny because there's a player known like Carlos Vinicius, for example, that was playing in the fourth
Yeah.
division in Serie D in Brazil, and then he makes it to top league in Portugal, Italy, and Premier League. So many profiles also of players that you find in the fourth league in Brazil, and fifth league and third leagues, suddenly are profiles that go really well here, but nobody really give a chance there because it's different. So talent for me, it's we always look it with the eyes of looking to the player, but we have to look with a
The
hat on
context.
ourselves, with the context, and it's what's gonna tell us that I think it's a talent. It's my own ideas, my club, my culture, my reality. So my mentor used to say, he was a philosopher. I learned a lot from him, and he used to say the world of life. There was a philosopher that spoke about the your world, your world, your world, the world of your life. So where your reality, it's made by your ideas, what you think it's right, where you live, what do you know, but it doesn't mean it's the same reality for every single one of us.
Yeah, that's very interesting actually, because first of all, you mentioned the stats about Brazilian players, and I think that applies to other countries too. I think about Italy because I'm more familiar with Italy, but every time Italians, I mean, it's changing slightly. I think for the globalization of football as well, but Italians do tend to come back a lot to Italy. Like there's that comfort zone, and not necessarily their comfort zone. Is where they can probably express their best football. And that puts me in the position to ask as well. Um, when it comes to talent, right? We had on the show the other day someone that plays in sixth division football in England right now, and he had played at the highest level at Bournemouth. Uh, we spoke about the differences, and we both like kind of agreed that to some extent, a very high level footballer that is successful at the highest level, it doesn't necessarily mean that that will translate at a very low level in England. You're familiar with, like, the National League, the National League
Yes.
South. Would you agree with that statement? And how do you view that?
Yeah, because the context changes. So although you're in the same country, same culture, it's a different context. What I found, for example, in the Premier League with the players I've worked with, is everybody is willing to work to their peak, to extras, be better every day. So you take one player and put him on a semi-pro level, and sometimes you'll struggle because his mentality is different.
Yeah.
So although it's the same country, same context in terms of culture, it's not the same club culture, the same division. So things change within the context and make give you a completely different outcome.
And how about from a technical and tactical standpoint? Because, like, just to give you more context, we envision Jorginho playing in the National League. And imagine, Jorginho with the long balls and all of that, and the second ball. And how would you like say from a technical standpoint? Would you say it's the same? Like,
No, it's not the same. Obviously, Jorginho and whoever is playing at that level, they will be the same. But if he does a diagonal and the player that receives it don't can't control it or needs to be in certain different angles, that's why at sometimes what starts counting a lot is the team culture, is the bonding, is the togetherness, it's the small distance between the lines, it's the all those aspects of the game start changing a bit more. Maybe you can't play as they call here expansive. Maybe you can. Maybe you can. Maybe you go more direct. Maybe you go less direct. Maybe, but imagine a player like that will expect to do an action and then to have a continuity, and sometimes he won't get that continuity. So how strong is he mentally to calm down and optimize what's around him rather than try to demand more of the others? That's mentality. We go again. That's the human. That's the beliefs who he is as a person that will make the difference.
and not necessarily about you. You spoke about the Premier League standards, right? Don't have to necessarily go in detail with Tottenham, but what is it like? You mentioned, like the willingness, to do the extra. What are the differences compared to your other experiences? Have you noticed within a Premier League setup, and even in not necessarily Tottenham, but even opponents? Like, what have you noticed?
Look, I can even compare when we start
Coaches,
when I started at so when I in many things. Let's say Senegal. Let's say youth team in Australia. They were third league in Australia. Those players they would work as hard because they really wanted. But there's a difference between trying to arrive there and being there. Once you're there, then you only arrive there because you'll have the mentality, the technical, the tactical, you'll have everything. And you can have more of one or more of the other. There's no perfect
of course.
player, there's no perfect coach, but you have to be willing to want to learn, to want to grow constantly. And what I've noticed from the league itself is people demand from each other. They demand from you as a coach. They'll tell you, I need more this, I need more that. Even during the exercises, we need to be quicker, slower, smarter, whatever they feel it's happening. And that's the way to arrive. There's many people that is not there, but they working hard to get there. And it doesn't mean you won't go in the National League and find, which you had the case of players being there and then arriving into the national team of England. So
100%.
so there are, and they want to work to get there, but they're just not there. And the ones that are there, It's because they've ticked all the boxes, and somebody said at a point they were searching talent, as we said, they said this guy is suited and gave them an opportunity. Because so how many get lost for not having an opportunity? I've seen many in Senegal that got to the highest and played in Serie A, in Portuguese top league, and etc. But how many were also good, but never got really looked at, didn't got the possibility, didn't got the chance to be there.
That's something very interesting, and I'm gonna ask straight away a follow up a question. How would you? I know it's very. I don't mean you to solve, like the issue, but how would you solve this? Like, because I know there's so much uncovered, undiscovered talent out there, and this is something we're very passionate about. How would you try to change it? Like, is it like, would you approach maybe clubs and trying to change this culture? Would you like change the agencies side of it? Like, what would you do if it was just down to you and then you had like just a button?
I can speak about what we've done. I think it worked really well. So what we're trying to do in let's go back to Africa was to bring players into tournaments, and we eventually won a couple of tournaments, especially in Italy, and then allowed that to be the platform for them to be
Exposure.
seen. So what we used to do was contacting scouts, clubs. We had many players on trial in top clubs in Italy. Many stayed, many didn't stay, but that was our way to try to help. But you can never solve that problem
Yeah.
because we will be one team. Even us, we were one academy. How many other academies with quality were out there? So I think it's the proactivity of the clubs and the possibility of implementing a good structure. But the good structure can't be, imagine you're a club in Denmark, let's say, and you go to Africa and you force them to think like you. I don't think that's what works. I think is you understand how the culture is, you understand how the values are of the society, you adapt. What you bring is the some guidelines in work, but you develop local staff too. You help them to be better, and then you maybe try to recruit from the league and academies and try to bring the maximum you can to your club, and from there maybe there's another, let's say, hotbed of talent that you can tap into it. But you'll never solve that problem,
Yeah,
because
there's
even if
always
you
gonna
do
be.
one or if you do 10, there will be millions that will be out there and untapped still.
And if you were a player, what would you do to position yourself? Like, apart from like doing the hard work, because as you mentioned, all the like not all the players maybe, but most of the players they do the hard work. But what would your mindset be? What your advice be to a young footballer?
So I've had a lot, and I've seen so many that will
Yeah,
will train doing trials. Sometimes in sandals, I've seen that, and we cannot tell them to do much because the resources they have are not much. What I'll tell everybody is go to knock on the door and go again and go again and go again. But there's also a lot of times I've been in for example, when I was in Australia, in Scotland, now here in England, you also get emails of people or messages trying to get to those clubs you are already at top. That won't work. I don't believe that will ever work. I think there's you have to understand, and that's the hard. How do they understand the reality is not I'm in an academy, not even sometimes in an academy, in a local club in Gambia, and I want to go, I'll contact the Premier League club. I don't think that. So you have to be realistic. You have to see, okay, I'm in Gambia. What's the best academy? Can I go? And if I don't pass, can I go again? And can I go again? And be persistent, and keep being persistent. That's the only way. But in a you have to understand reality. You cannot try to jump from there to the Premier League, but you can tap into your best local club. Maybe travel a bit in your country and try to get into an academy, and then be prepared, because when you show up, many times they won't give you. So one thing we used to do with recruitment was we we knew they will travel sometimes 200 kilometers. So we won't do a training and then say, look, you're not in. Normally, you would bring for a week, allow somebody to come, settle, speak to the others, get the travel out of the system, and then allow them
Have a
to
look.
showcase, have a proper look. But even there will be mistakes.
100%.
But that's the process you can have. You can't be perfect either when you're recruiting and when you're doing. You have to be the closest to perfect you can be for your reality. But there will always be gaps. There will always be possibilities. Even when AI comes into, AI will miss loads of players because I've worked with some in youth, and I'll tell you, they made the top of the world, and the AI would lose them for sure. Wouldn't catch them.
One catch them. That's it makes me feel good about it because I feel like I love working with AI. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a beautiful tool to have at disposal, but I also I think especially in football where there's those tiny details that you can't catch, at least not yet, with AI. Because I actually like that leads to the next question: how much do you trust data and how do you use it? Because I personally use it a lot, but I think you need to at some point cross a line, and then you need to actually see and make a conclusion. But how do you use it?
I think AI is important and data is very important, but it's not the most important. It can't lead the process. It has to help the process. So when you look at data, you look at numbers, and I'm telling you, for me, football is a human activity. So there you go.
Yes,
Like
explain.
we're wired to weight things, to measure things, to count things. So we're wired to do those things. But in reality, the human being is a whole, a whole of a human being. Even I'll go deeper than this. You know that the first time the expression physical education was registered, as far as we know, was in 17, maybe 62, around that time. A man called, the doctor called Balex Xerd, was from Switzerland, I think, and he mentioned physical education. So that means educate the physical and separate from the human. It's not from the mind. It's not possible. It's not possible because when you're playing, you're both, your mind and body at the same time. You cannot say, I'm only going to educate the physical, then I'm only going to educate the mental. No, both things are in interaction every day in everything you do. Now, the AI can help you to track some things, but we're always going to be human. So our human behavior won't be trackable because every single one of us has a different behavior. Every single one of us can react differently to the same situation. You have one situation, today you react in one way because your mood is different, tomorrow in another, and then the other day you learned, so you will react in another. And I think AI will never substitute a Zoom call, a talk with somebody, trying to get answers. See how that people think, how that person thinks, and how that person talks. See if they will fit the team culture, if they will fit your country culture. So those are the things AI can never give you. They can give you the speed. They can give you the things we've said the data will give you, which is counting, weight, measure, but it won't give you the human side, the mental, the thing you can't separate from the numbers, because everybody wants and data wants quantify, But what about the qualitative? The qualitative, you can't put a number on the qualitative. You may do questionnaires and you try to put numbers on, but it's not like that. And the human nature is, if I can't count, if I can't measure, if I can't quantify it, it's not good. No, but it is. Because that qualitative part sometimes is the difference, as you say, how that person is as a person, how he reacts in the moments. And I know big teams, and I've read a lot about PSG, for example. Luis Campos, which is a Portuguese sporting director, he talks about when he observes players. in a in a way I love, because
Behavioral.
he speak about the behavior. How do they react when they get substituted? How do they react when they get a hard tackle, when they get a yellow, a red card, when the team is down 1-0, 2-0, 2-1? It's 10 minutes to go,
Body
five.
language and
Body
yeah.
language. So how can you measure? I'm sure you can get close, but you can never predict human behavior 100% accurate.
I will tell you what, actually, I even believe in energy. Like being in the same room with someone. I think the energy is so that's my personal opinion. I think it's so important too. You get a sense of the person even more when you're in the same room or like next to them. So yeah, I mean, we surely know for a fact right now AI cannot track any of that, both behaviors, but I think even energy. And like I said, I'm big on that. I think if I was to be a sporting director or like head of recruitment, and if I was to spend a lot of money on a player or like to especially like look after the team success, I would want to meet with the player and potentially have the player, the manager, maybe a couple of leaders on the team to meet and see if the fit could actually work. I know that's not always possible, but in an ideal world, you will actually probably want that to get like an actual sense of how that dynamic would be. So yeah,
Definitely. And for example, you talk about energy. I love that. I really believe in it too. And not only me or you, it's physics. They talk about one thing talk about a lot in football: momentum.
yeah,
How do you measure momentum?
yeah.
But physics talks about momentum. So that's something that really exists. And there, then people talk about ways to change momentum. For example, if you're attacking a lot and you want to keep the momentum, what are you going to do? If you want to break the momentum because the other team is too strong, what are you going to do? So we talk about that momentum, but there will be a moment where we're going to measure kind of that. But physics talks about momentum, but it's something that it's a word.
I think yeah. I mean, I think you spot on. Yeah, I don't think you can even measure that because I'm thinking, for example, I don't know if you remember, it was a Euro knockout phase of England against Italy, and we went to penalties. Italy went to penalties, and England had Josh Hart in goal, and Josh Hart was being very cinematographic in his movements and stuff, and Pirlo did the cucchiaio, right? And then that shifted the whole dynamic. But you can't measure that. You can't think what Pirlo is thinking in that moment. That's something that you can't track. Like a leader stepping up like that and changing that momentum is something that I believe you can't predict that would
I
happen.
agree. That's why I think it's human behavior. So everybody, even Pirlo, on the same occasion, he'll probably
Do
do
something
10
different.
different things 10 times.
100%.
So I agree with you. That's why I think the human will always be different. And you can never really get a game that is 100% not human. I think if you, of course, you can play with robots, etc., but how funny will that be? Because it's predictable.
Yeah.
You can't really, the human behavior won't be able to be completely defined or measured. So the qualitative will be always stronger than the quantitative, or both can work together.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's is I'm gonna make a silly example, but I feel like that's a bit like video games where they try to make it as realistic as possible. I personally like last time I've played against a friend, I had a hard time because I'm like, this is just not realistic. But it's like because there are patterns, you know, and like you said, you can never fully break out from those patterns, in with AI because they have to be they have to live with patterns. They can't fully have. I mean, I believe the human touch within a football setup or basketball setup or mixed martial arts setup is always going to be there. So it's very interesting that we cover that. Actually, talking about dynamics. Uh, how would you define the best coaching dynamics? You've been alongside some great coaches. How would you define that?
Complementary. So things that can complement the coaches, things that relationships that can sometimes something he's not seeing, then you want to try to fix it. Sometimes you don't even tell him you've done something. You just do it for the sake of the group and the performance. So I think it's important. I actually was speaking with some people in a conference I went to in Portugal, saying that the courses should tell people how to choose their staff. Most of the times, the staffs are chosen for trust. Maybe if I have a son, I'll get him in. I know I can trust him. We know how the football world can be untrustworthy, but that's the most times the idea of whoever makes staffs. But you can also have, you can try to tap a bit more with ask for references or develop your own way of tapping into the human side and get to know other people. What am I good at? So if I'm very good at something, do I need three people like me
Doing the same thing.
doing the same thing and wanting to do the same thing? Because it's not only that. For example, you're a manager. Do you want to work with somebody that wants to be a manager and he has your strength? Your strength is communication, and his strength is communication, and the other strength is communication. Also, want to be a manager? Then it's a bit boring. Yeah?
Yeah.
Imagine everybody is eating rice
Yeah.
in the world. It's very boring. All the other restaurants, they'll close.
Yeah.
So it's good to diversify
Based on.
what I'm strong at. What do I need? Do I need somebody that do exercises? Somebody that's good dealing with the group? Somebody that is good in analysis? Somebody that is good attacking wise, defending wise, communication? So I think there's a bigger scope on the way the stuffs are done. And like the players, we talked about the players. How can you tap into the unknown talent, and how can you tap into the unknown coaching talent? Because
100%.
many times it's a closed recipe. You know already, oh, I'm going to give the
I'm not even
job
going to share it.
I'm going to give the job to that person, and we all know about it. We all know, but okay, I'll just put it out there, an announcement to see what happens. But I know he's going to be. So what happened to the other 50 guys that were good, and what happened to the other 500 guys that were good in the country but didn't even apply, and what happened to the other 5,000 around the Europe that could be there and are not? So it's a bit like, I think there's a lot of untapped talent too, but the human uncertainty and the insecurity sometimes doesn't take you further. But if you develop your own strategy, maybe it's talking to people, ask for reference, etc., you can get very surprised and put together unbelievable stuff teams.
My struggle that I've had with football, I think sometimes it's largely dominated by ego as well. And like you mentioned, especially I don't want to go specific into clubs or like countries, but in some countries as well, specifically, they're very protective, and I think that is definitely not a good thing for you as a club, as a manager, as a sporting director, because that leaves you vulnerable to just be closed-minded at some point. It doesn't matter how good you are, if you don't open your scope, if you don't open yourself up, then you're not going to be able to see what's behind that curtain. So
100%, I agree with that. And you can see, for example, here in England, how many world-class coaches from different countries the country already had. They had Mourinho, it had Wenger, it had Klopp, it had Pep, it had Ange, it has people from all over the world bringing new ideas, and with that, even the local stuff. That's what I was telling before, with somebody opening an academy in Senegal. Develop the people that is there too, the academy. Everybody gets to tap into different ideas and then grow with it. That's why it's a league for me, the Premier League. It's miles ahead of the other leagues because of the diversity in culture that it has, and the quality of ideas that they end up having. Conte was here, Italy, Portugal, Spain,
There's everything.
Germany, Holland, from all over the world. So it's fantastic. And if you go to other leagues that are a bit more closed, it's like they're stuck in their own ways, and eventually they'll get past because
And they
everybody
all
else.
struggle because, like, for example, like an English coach in Italy potentially would struggle because, and then the overall, like moving forward, if the English culture of coaches is really good, Italy will struggle too because they're not able to implement a new school of thought, and like that just creates like a negative circle.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think.
I agree. And what you said about the ego, it's also true. And for me, that's why I always say, for me, nobody wins anything alone, and it's always we. It's we. We is bigger than one, because alone nobody can win anything. Even if you're great, you'll need a team behind. Even if the team is not what you expected or wanted, you can still win it if the process is good and you push it well. But it's important to control the ego, because that's what you kind of sometimes um, um, measuring more or dealing with more in the highest level is uh, not taking things personally, and always taking things for the well of the team. It's always for the team, the title, the growth of the group. And the most important, it's always the player. In the end, the structures exist to get the players comfortable with knowledge and within the ideas we want them to work. But the most important in all of this is the player. They need to be well. So they need to be well as human, as technically, tactically, physically, all together at the same time, not separated in different rows. That's why I said can separate the mind and the body.
The body as one.
Everything has to be together, and then manage how do you get the feedback, and you take it for the growth of the team rather than reacting
Taking it
because
personally.
take it personally, it's ego, and it's not a growth mindset, isn't
And I
it?
think if you have like if the ego overpowers you, then you end up not growing. That's what I think happens when the ego takes over. Then that's when you stop growing too, because you don't allow any constructive criticism or any opinions within your life, and then you just. I think that applies to everything, not just to football. I think when you have too much ego, it stops your growth, and it stops the growth of whoever's next to you, around you, when what they're doing is close to what you are doing as well. So
If you do that, you have to go to an isolated island. Then you can be right
you
every
can be
time.
the king there.
He'll be the king of the island. But we're social, so we're social beings,
Yeah,
and you need to know how to deal with things socially,
and be with others. Yeah,
and be with
100%.
others. And sometimes you have to swallow your ego and do the best for the team and for the team achievement.
Are you talking about achievements, and you have over the past few years, you have under your belt some great achievements. Going from the last, obviously the special, like you guys made history at Tottenham. Um, is there anything you can share about like those achievements that you had, whether it's in Australia? I know like being in Senegal, that was an achievement itself. Is there anything you can share, from most recent to past?
Yeah, from everywhere I went, and we won something as a group. Portugal, we won a cup in Angola. In Italy, in Senegal, we won a big tournament in Docena. In Australia, we won not only the championship, but when we were in youth, we also won 20s and the reserve team that used to play in the third league. So and this season obviously the Europa League. So what's common within them all? It's exactly what we spoke about: the growth mindset, high performance environment, everybody wanting to learn, to get better, to be better. Very good change rooms, so people with more people with growth mindset than not, and in some of them nobody without a growth mindset, to be honest. Everybody just needs a bit of guidance in the way. um, And then the secret for me is the process, because we say a lot in football. It's a game of opinions. Look,
Yeah.
it's a game of opinions socially, but some opinions are better than other. Some opinions are bad because make your Mourinho said something at my university I'll never forget. He was from the same in Lisbon. Once he goes and he says, uh, there are coaches and then coaches. The coaches are the ones that make their teams and their players better. The uncoaches are the ones that make their teams and their players worse. Everybody thinks it's my opinion and it's good, but some are doing worse. Some are making their teams worse and their players, and they'll perform better with somebody else. It's true. So it's a game of opinions, but some processes are better than others, and some processes win more and some less. When I was a scout when I started at Benfica, I was also doing scouting for youth, and we all got assessed. What's your you got assessed for the players you would try to recruit to the club, and in the end, some will stay in the process and some will go.
Someone.
So some opinions were better than others. So I think you have to stop that with the. It's a game of opinions. Everybody can have it. One thing is everybody can have
You
it.
can have it, but not necessarily
Yeah.
it's good.
The other thing, it's not good. It's better. Okay, you can have it, but go in that island and speak alone by yourself. Then you'll be right, because if you come here, it's not right. So some will be more right than others more often, and I think the processes make the difference.
And I think actually that ties into ego again, because being open to criticism. If you have a bad opinion and someone just comes up to you say, "Look, I think that's wrong," don't take it personally.
No, 100%, and that's very important, because again, as you say, that's how we developed as humans. Also, somebody said, "Let's make a knife with a rock." Somebody said some. Imagine, even when they said that the Earth is round, like it's always somebody breaks and somebody creates things, and if the others sometimes adapt or listen and then can even adjust their processes a bit from what they listen, they obviously have a growth mindset. They'll become better. You just have to make sure they take the feedback as a growth for the team rather than something personal, like an attack on themselves. So that's not easy to do, but it requires training, but you can train it every day. You don't have to be perfect, but you have to train it and try to be aware and try to get better at it.
Talking about growth, we haven't talked about your growth. Uh, coaches do grow as well a lot. And what you mentioned to me, I remember you mentioned you wanted to, your ambitions on the previous episode that we've done together. You mentioned you wanted to become the best assistant coach in the world. How far you think you are from that goal, and what growth have you seen within the last couple of years?
Okay, I'm probably 3 to 4 languages away. I speak 6. I would really like to speak more. Arabic, I think it's very important. Mandarin, Japanese. I would like to know more. I'm always keen. I say, oh, if I would go and work in Cyprus or whatever, I want to learn the
Learn that.
language, because, say, again, go back to the same values. It's a human game. So if I don't speak their language, I can't
It's
communicate with them.
different.
As an assistant, as whatever I'm doing, a counselor, whatever, I need to speak to the people to get into their tap into their minds, because many times I found that different cultures want to say something, they just misunderstood. Some come across as arrogant, some come across as not caring, but it's not the point. Sometimes they do care, they're not arrogant. It's just the way
The way
they used to
they
say
speak,
that.
yeah.
So I'm a few languages away, and look, the more you know, the worst thing is the more you know, the more you think
You
you
don't
don't
know.
know. So it's just a cycle. Will never end. Will never end. And it's not only about being technically good at coaching. It's being also a better person on your life, with your family, with your friends, with your neighbors. It's a constant growth process, and you can only try to be, but it will never end. You're always gonna have so much to learn. It's never gonna stop.
And how was that Premier League experience? Like, because obviously you can now say, I belong there. I belong to that level. No?
Yeah, I used to say that I was in Senegal, so I was already that confident. No, I do think I do belong there to that level. But again, there's so much to learn.
You have
There's
to
so
earn
much
it.
to see. There's so much to do still. I do believe. I always believed. The belief is not the problem. Even throughout the season, I always believed we would win the Europa League, for example. So the belief is not the question. Is how do you keep growing? How do you keep going? How do you? It's being you're constant motivated. How do you constantly have possibilities? Because I'm only there because somebody gave me a chance to be there. How can you keep having those possibilities moving forward? And that's the biggest challenge now. It's not about the believing. It's there for many years now. I always said it was funny. I went to Belfast, and one of my friends is some. I've done all the coaching badges there with the Irish FA, and one of my friends, he said, "Do you remember when we were in the UFC?" So I went to do the pro now, and we were in the UFC. He's not coaching anymore. He's a painter, but he's a good friend. I really value people, and he was Johnny. Is Clapham. Is somebody I really value a lot and stayed in my life. And he said, "You said you were coaching in the Premier League one day. I didn't believe it." Yeah, I said, "Yeah, that's your problem because I did when
I
I
didn't
said it."
believe
But
it.
sums it up well.
I think that's amazing. But I have a question that's more personal for me because like, I'm 30 years old and I still believe like you said there's growth, until like, forever really. Um how do you manage with the because football is a roller coaster. I'm fairly new to the industry and I'm still trying to adjust to this roller coaster of like things that are happening and then today, this week, crazy week, like a lot of things, exciting things happening. Next week, nothing. How do you manage that? Because that's just curiosity for me myself.
It's just discipline. So I mentioned that I was a military, a marine 3 years, and it comes with the routines. So it was always important before you would go to an exercise to make sure your boots are tied, make sure you do the simple things well. And it's the same thing. You make sure you try to have a routine waking up, take the daughter to school, then do some workouts. Lately has been canceling the phone, the gas, the internet, all the
The
bills,
bills.
all of sell the cars, and be like a salesman. But it's important you do the simple things well, and you create routines. For example, when I didn't have much money, because I come from a very poor background, and when I started, I didn't have money to put fancy clothes, but it wasn't an excuse not to dress well. Understand?
100%, yeah.
So it's a bit like that. You may be broke, you may be tired, you may be anxious, but you can only control those small things on the way. You can only control that you still have proud on yourself and you stay within the routine that you know it's positive for your body and mind.
That's amazing. I will tell you something off air about this because I don't want to share it. But yeah, I'll tell you something about that. But honestly, it's, I don't know how long we've been recording. I think we're going next to the hour. So I just wanna say thanks again, and if you can share just a last, will we see you? You think this season? Will we see you? Soon. On the scene again. I think it's quite important for us. Do you think we'll see
Look,
you
it's good because it's almost dinner time.
dinner time?
I got to, but no, really, I don't know. The now everything is open, so I'm without a club and seeing what's happening and what can I control again. It's really have that discipline
Yourself.
of myself, my behavior, and trying to keep a routine every day. That's the only thing I can control. When is the phone's gonna ring? To where, I don't know. But anyway, if it's not for here, we'll see each other again for sure.
100%. Yeah,
We'll come back.
I'll look forward already for the next one. It's been a massive pleasure. Thank you so much, Sergio.
Big pleasure.
Thank
Grazie
you.
mille a te.
Prego.